Do you want a financially secure future, not just for yourself, but for your loved ones as well? This is Generations of Wealth, the podcast that breaks down the most effective wealth building strategies you can easily apply to your own life. Join investor and international best-selling author Derek Dombeck in exploring practical tips and sound advice on building a profitable business, creating a powerful brand, or getting into the thriving world of real estate investing. This is your chance to create your very own financial roadmap to live your vision, love your life. Let's begin this discussion with your host, Derek Dombeck.
Welcome to the Generations of Wealth podcast. I am your host, Derek Dombeck, and today we are talking about what is it like to be a passive investor, which ultimately should be everybody's goal. And most people don't necessarily believe they can get there. So I'm going to bring on Spencer Hilligoss, and he's going to talk to you about his journey from Silicon Valley executive, big job, to walking away from all that, just being a passive investor. It's really an incredible story. Great guy. Before I bring Spencer on, though, again, I do this every show. I really want to thank all of you that are listening. Appreciate everybody that follows us. Anything you can do to help grow the Generations of Wealth family, spread the word, help us with, all the shares and the likes and everything like that. Anything you need from us, don't hesitate to reach out. You can send me a personal email to my email address, derek@globalgow.com, or go to thegenerationsofwealth.com, and there's contact information there. You can see everything we have going on all the time. So with that, let's bring on our guest, Spencer Hilligoss. And here he is, the one, the only, Spencer Hilligoss. Spencer, thank you for being on the Generations of Wealth show. Welcome.
Derek, honored to be here. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. You are in California. We, as we're recording this today, there are still some challenges coming or hitting California with the fires, things like that. So first of all, it sounds like you're not in an area that's affected by that, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I'm based up in Alameda, which is up in the Bay Area in North Cal. But Jennifer Morimoto, who's my better half and COO of our investing club, she born and raised in Southern California. So she's from South Pasadena. So thankfully, at the time being, her family is okay, brothers, sisters, parents, etc. But they're not that far. And we know so many folks that are directly impacted right now. So our hearts go out to those folks right now. It's a tough time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say the heartwarming part about any time that there's something tragic that happens in the United States, even yesterday watching NFL playoff football games and things of that nature, at least it's recognized people are out there praying for you and doing what they can. That said, tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll kind of dive into how you became just really a passive investor and learned from your experiences.
Yeah, as a kid who grew up feeling I was pretty punk rock and reluctant to get into anything business related altogether, I just feel very blessed to be sitting here spending my primary professional focus on leading Madison Investing. It's a passive investing club. Grew up very organically. Jennifer and I were both in careers, W-2 careers for 13 years. I walked away from that career in 2019, about 5 months before COVID. That was not part of the plan, but we were investing for years, buying rentals, eventually realizing that's a bit more hands-on than we could really fit into a busy life with a couple of young kids during that time. But then we discovered, you could put 25K, 50K, 100K passively into bigger pieces of some other types of deals on this wonderful private market of investing that's out there. I just had no idea about any of this stuff, Derek. I was building big teams for financial tech companies in Silicon Valley for 13 years and thinking, okay, cool. I'm going to get that big, that big exit, that big IPO moment everyone dreams about, kind of like a Silicon Valley lottery, as it were. And that never really panned out, but we did make great income and fortunate to do well in dual income household here in the Bay Area, but still had to work hard for it, man. And I think now we live a life that I really couldn't have dreamed of back in the day. We still work hard, of course. We don't just sit on a beach and sip in Mai Tais, but what we do is give you an example. Like this past summer, we have two young boys, 10 and 7. I know you and I were chatting about kids right before this, but like we took the kids and lived in another country. We lived in Croatia and Montenegro for about 6 weeks this last summer. Kids were in like an immersion school, and it was really, really spectacular. It wasn't a vacation. I mean, we were working during the day and still finding time for adventures and new experiences. So that is the second summer in a row we've been able to do something like that. And it's just a little slice of like this lifestyle that we have built the hard way, over the course of years. It started as a side hustle, investing on our own, and then became an investing business called Madison Investing. And that's the primary focus for us these days.
Well, I have to tell you, I don't get to talk to a whole lot of people that take a month to 6 weeks with their families. And that's actually something that my wife, Tracy, and I have done. Let's see, 2001, 2, 3, and 4.
Nice.
Because I was challenged by a mentor of mine. Again, this is all about vision, right? He was taking a month-long RV trip with his family, and I just told him how envious I was of him. And he said, well, why don't you do it? And we had no idea how we were going to actually pull it off, but we put it on the calendar. We did it that first year. And then I think the first year was 4.5 weeks. Second year was 5. 2023, we actually were in Europe for 15 days. And then we came back and still took 2 or 3 weeks in the RV. So yeah, it gives you some very, very clarifying moments if you can actually get away, not to mention the time with your family. It's irreplaceable.
Oh, that's so cool. And that was in 2023, you said?
Yeah, well, like I said, 21 was the first summer we did it, the month of July, and then we've done it every summer since. So,
oh, good for you guys. That's amazing. We want to do the RV thing too. We've only done kind of a shorter stretch renting RVs, but we've never done like the long epic road trip.
You haven't lived until you have your children in the back seat of your vehicle pulling a long RV. Yeah, I don't want to talk you out of it. It is fantastic. But it shows you, it tests your patience a little bit.
Yeah.
but not in a bad way. I mean, that's all growing pains. But the part that's awesome is when you are, somewhere together as your family. And like for us personally, I don't necessarily like planning anything. We did one trip from Wisconsin to Idaho and back throughout the summer, and just you're driving along and you see a sign for the world's, largest rubber band ball, and you feel like spending the night there, you spend the night there. That's part that we enjoy, is the spontaneity of it. And that doesn't work for everybody, but I think if I had to plan every spot we were going to stop and every place we were going to spend 2-3 days or a week, the travel there would be more stressful, right? You're like on a schedule all the time.
Oh yeah.
At least for us. But the only way that that's possible for us or yourself, right? We have to have our businesses designed and built to where we can have the time as well as the resources and finances to do that. So going right back to, passively investing in real estate, that's giving you at least some freedom and time right now, and hopefully much, much more in the future. But you said something early on. You said you had your own rentals before, which tells me that you experienced the joys of management of tenants and toilets. And because you have to know what to invest in, right?
Right.
So talk about that. Like, where did you first learn about real estate to start with? But then as you started looking at passive investments, how do you vet those? How do you know they're credible, somewhere that you feel comfortable putting your money?
Yeah, happy to go into it. Full disclosure, I grew up in a real estate household. My dad was a broker for 30 years. And I have to share this because, before I kind of get into the investing as an adult myself in a career, my dad had me working open houses. He had me cleaning out fridges for properties that were going to go on market. And this is when I was like a preteen and then a teenager. And that's a big reason, Derek, why like I went into tech. So, I mean, it was looking back, everything in hindsight is always 2020, right? And I look back and I'm like, wow, at the time, I mean, I got to shake hands with some pretty cool celebrity figures at open houses he was doing. And, this is like the Niners, 49ers. I got to like meet Jerry Rice and Joe Montana. And this is stuff at the time. I'm like, oh, cool. Didn't really get it, but in hindsight, that was a very narrow slice of what real estate is, but that is the lens that most people see, right? They see brokerage, they see being an agent. And like my dad and I never really talked about investing in properties growing up, but I just got to share this because it was really a catalyst. It was like a spark that lit our journey as an adult. My dad and our family, when I was growing up, went through this time we now call kind of like a dark decade. Lost my younger brother to cancer when he was a teenager, lost, 3 other, family members, like a set of grandparents in a car crash. All this stuff hit really fast and really hard years ago. We just passed the 20-year anniversary of my brother's passing. And at that time, I look back and like my dad was crushing it in his business, but that was the one type of income coming into our household. It was very active, right? The broker's 100% based on commission. Yeah. So that's like as active gets. And so when all the tragedy hit, it had so many ramifications. Like our lifestyle scaled down dramatically. And so I'm not going to act like we weren't put out on the street or anything. But that was an extraordinarily challenging time. And now as a dad myself, a couple young kids, and having carved out a career in tech, and then also moved over to lead and build this private equity investing club, a huge catalyst for me to sit there and think like, how do I ensure that there's more than one active income stream coming into this household? And not just to go have amazing trips that enrich our lives, but also because, God forbid I get hit by a bus, not to be too grim, but like life comes at you. Mm-hmm. And I think that is really a critically important catalyst for me, because now, when I remember our first son was born, I'm like, something's got to give, man. I mean, I was working 80 hours a week in tech companies, in office, not including when you open up the laptop at night, after the kids go down. And that was, just to give people a sense of time, that was around like, around 2015, 2014, I was feeling extraordinarily burnt out, not seeing light at the end of the tunnel, even though we were making great income in our lives and maxing out our 401ks and all that.
And how old were you at that time?
Mid 30s.
Okay.
Yeah, like early mid 30s when it first started to really kick in, and I'm about to be 42 now, and so I think I look back at that time and I'm like, I'm glad it got that hard. I'm glad that it was real touch and go there for my relationship at that moment too, because I never would have started to look, and I never would have started to explore other ways that wealth building occurs, and you can earn your way there with W-2 income. We were making great income, but all that 401k money wasn't going to be serving us any time for the next 30 years, and we hadn't bought any real estate. So eventually we got to this first of 3 phases where we went around and bought a rental locally. And that was because we thought it was too scary to buy something sight unseen. Mm-hmm. We dropped $430,000 on a duplex, just about 45 minutes north of me from here. And that generated $200 a month in cash flow, which is like a total not a win when it comes to cash flow, right?
To be clear, this is California real estate, so you actually cash flowing was amazing.
Thank you for saying that, Derek.
Absolutely.
That is 100% accurate. And so I think that when I catch up with friends and acquaintances in the real estate investing business with far more zeros behind their name than I have, and they crack a joke like, "Oh, $200 for putting down over $100,000," and I'm like, yeah, but you should talk to the number of people who pay to keep a condo every month, And so that was phase 1. We spent all summer with our kid in the car, just trying to find that one darn rental, and so that we had to stretch our dollars further. We ended up looking outside California. We narrowed in on Kansas City. Eventually built up to a portfolio. We got to about 5 single family rentals. Mm-hmm. Economics way better. That was $60,000 a pop. on average, $250 a month cash flow on average. And that was great on paper. But I think you kind of spoke to this earlier, and you and I have a very similar style of humor. And I'm a sarcastic dude to my own fault sometimes.
I do not know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And, once we started getting, notices from the city that there's a couch on one of the properties, front lawns, and we were getting, property manager on these assets. We pay our 10% per month of the revenue coming in towards these property managers. And it was still just like issue after issue after issue. And it was semi-passive at best. And that is very much how I view rentals now. Is like, I'm not anti, and I really am supportive of building portfolios of rentals, but it's just about being eyes wide open. When the kids are grown, I'm all about it. But for that stage of life and for us now, we just didn't really want to add more overhead to our lives, more responsibilities for things that we're supposed to be generating income and growing our wealth. So that brought us to stage 3. And that's still where we are now, from my perspective, which is we cut a check for our first, it was like a multifamily syndication. This is back in about, I think, 2018. And it went extraordinarily well. And then we did another, and we did another. We invested in self-storage. And those were the two asset classes within kind of bigger commercial real estate that we really leaned into, was multifamily and self-storage facilities. And that's treated us well. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like it's perfect. The last couple of years have been real educational, I think, for a lot of investors, because most of our deals have gone well. A couple of them stopped paying distributions, I mean, it definitely have had a capital call before, all that stuff. But we have not had to do any of that work ourselves when it comes to our passive investments. And so, it's been a journey.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll go back to, how do you vet the deals that you want to put your money into?
I think a mentor, I've used multiple coaching programs and devoured education when I first got into this stuff. I also had, an advantage in that the last of 5 tech companies before I moved on from tech in 2019, they were a real estate lender and a tech company.
Okay.
So I was brought in, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as a guy who knows how to scale big operations teams. And I had to lead a team of loan originators and, build their training and lead them and hire a bunch of folks. And I didn't know what it meant to originate a loan. I didn't know what it meant to analyze the lifetime, or the loan to value on a property, LTV, so I had to go in there, figure that out. And eventually we were doing over 600 loans per month for fix and flips on single family homes. Okay. And I learned how to underwrite. And that was all very much, foundational stuff. I saw folks going off on the weekends doing side hustles and realizing, oh, there's wealth to be built here, but I can't swing a hammer, man. So I had to figure out what's the best lens and approach I could take to this. What do I know? Well, I know how to vet people. I know how to hire. I've hired hundreds of people, literally. So we built a 5-part framework for our own vetting of sponsors. And I learned from someone way smarter than me, from a former coach. There's 3 ways to look at a passive deal. And you look at the team, you look at the market, you look at the business plan. But the team, the who, is 90+% of the risk profile, right? Of the whole picture, regardless of what great market they pick, regardless of what type of property they buy. It comes down to, betting on the jockey, as it were, not the horse. And so that's where we leaned in, and we look at 5 different things in our vetting framework. We built this out over time, but it's got 70 or so rows in an Excel spreadsheet I won't bore you with, but the big buckets are, you're looking at track record, approach, team, communications, and values. And each of those have a bunch of really robust kind of qualifying criteria beneath them. But a couple samples would be, have they done it before? Has it gone well? On approach, it doesn't just mean something generic. It means something really specific. It means okay, I'll use a nerdy analogy. If I have done something before and I know it really well, I can articulate it in great detail. So I play a lot of guitar. I like to think I'm okay at it.
Yeah.
But if I have to learn something complex like a new solo, you better believe I can walk through the exact steps that I took to learn that darn thing, because I'm not some savant. I really had to work at that. I had to practice it day to day. I had to break it down into component parts. Same thing goes for a business plan. If a sponsor who does self-storage is going to buy that facility, accept my $50K or my $100K investment to do so, I want to know when did they buy that facility like that before? How did they decide to go and implement these strategies? And how, yada, yada, all the way through to the point where they sell that property at a profit and hopefully return my capital intact, and also a good looking profit on top of it. And so those are some of the things that we look for. But I think in the end, I have to just share that, like, the point of debate I often get into in a friendly way with other folks in the space of investing is that looking at values, it's not squishy to me. I think that that's actually quite firm, because you can test for behavioral interviewing. You can do all kinds of stuff to just understand, are these capable humans that we're about to trust our money with, which is big dollar amounts. I don't care how big someone's net worth is. If they're investing 50K, that's a lot of money. But are the humans at the steering wheel for these deals, are they capable of making decisions in service of investors and in service, even more so, if people are living in these things? If it's an apartment community, I care that they care about the people living there, and those are just kind of the most important stakeholders in all of this is the people living in those units, So I don't want to soapbox too much at folks, but those are some of the things that matter a lot to me.
Well, and I had a meeting a couple days ago with a gentleman who's trying to get his startup to, he's off the ground, but he's at this point now where he needs operating capital. He can get larger contracts, but he needs to be able to cover materials and all the normal stuff with growing a business, except he's never been there before. And so I took a 2-hour meeting with him that took, ended up being 5 hours, which was great. It was good conversation. And it's not my wheelhouse because it's not a real estate business. It's more of a contracting type of a deal. But what was interesting to me was all of these things are so similar, right? Like his business, your business, my business, they all have 95% of the components are the same.
That's right.
We have little nuances. And the first question I asked him was about his marketing budget. And he said, well, this is, they're on a shoestring budget, but they don't need to increase their marketing budget because they can't take on any more contracts today because they don't have the capital to front those contracts, right? Like it's the apple or chicken or the egg situation, right?
Right.
And I just played this all back in my head over the weekend as I was thinking it through, because we were in a very similar scenario when we were growing our lending business. I used to co-own a hard money lending company for 10 years.
Nice.
And it was the same thing. We started very small. It was like a side project. We would do 1 or 2 loans a month. That grew to 3 to 4 loans a month. And, when I exited a little over a year ago, we were averaging 25 loans a month. And I looked at just the 10-year growth curve of what we did. It was very, very slow for the first 6 years. And then our catalyst actually was COVID.
No kidding.
A lot of the hard money lending companies that were national, they sold on Wall Street. Wall Street stopped buying their notes. And overnight, our applications went up 400%.
You were there for the moment.
Yeah, but we couldn't fund most of the transactions, even if they were good, but we got to cherry pick the best deals.
Yeah.
And which made our default rate extremely low. And that was great, right? So I look at what you're doing now, kind of the same thing as this guy with his startup that's trying to get over the hump. You invested certain amounts of capital in certain deals. You said some had, stopped distributions, had some capital calls. Do you feel like you're over the hump now with Madison Investing? Do you feel like you're on, the curve is going up now pretty steeply, or what do you see coming?
No, I appreciate you sharing that. And kudos to you for being there and having built that business for that right moment within COVID. That's awesome, Derek. For us,
it was pure luck.
Well, in all fairness on our end, like our journey, we happened to build our investing club and also just invest passively leading up to the most banner year of valuations that any of us may see for the next 20, which was 2021. And so we've already exited 20 deals as of this year. It's so I'd say by most definitions that's highly experienced and it's gone extraordinarily well. To date, we have not lost a single dollar of capital in a real estate deal. I don't expect that to always be the case. I'm not delusional.
Right.
But I think just feeling very grateful. And I think, what do they say about luck? It's when preparation, meets opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really what happened for us is now it's very, very much more prominent out there, right? Like all the capital formation strategies, people putting together funds and raising capital and stuff. And we just got into it. I was told the other day by someone in the investing network, he was like, "Yeah, but you were doing this before it was cool." And I was like, I never really thought of it that way. But we were there a little bit early on it, and so that certainly helped. But these days, I would say, unlike some firms that are trying to scale to the moon, I look back to my tech career, having worked inside the guts of multiple VC funded companies where the pressure that comes in for these companies, despite their growth, amazing revenue growth, amazing headcount growth on these companies I've been part of, it is sometimes so much pressure to grow at all costs that it not only impacts the people that are working there, working their butts off, it also impacts how well they can serve their clients. So one thing that matters to me greatly as well, Derek, is like our goal is to look at work with amazing partners. It's about marriage, not dating, right? The hold periods alone for deals that we invest in are like 5 years plus oftentimes. So that's longer than college,
right.
Stuff changes. So we want to make sure we stick with folks that we've worked with. We don't just jump into random deals with folks that we met on the internet. What we do is we take our time. And so the goal now is continue doing it the way we have been doing it. We're the number one source of new folks that invest alongside us in our investing club are referrals. And that is truly, it's a bit old school, but it just works like a charm because we know that at least there's some kind of filtering for mutual fit.
Well, I would say this, with specifically our real estate deals and our lending company that I used to have, it was all privately funded. I mean, we didn't use any capital or institutional money, I should say, institutional capital. And I can't tell you how many times we turned away sizable investors, but we just knew they were going to be such a mess.
Right.
And it wasn't worth it. Like we wanted to do business with people that were fun to do business with, that when a challenge comes up, you can have a civil conversation. You can come up with reasonable expectations for how we're going to solve for whatever the challenge is. And that's really what we did for so long. And as I said, the growth curve went up because people saw what we were doing. We weren't approaching people for, to raise money. They were approaching us. Hey, how can we get involved in what you're doing?
Right.
And that changes the whole dynamic when you're not out there desperately trying to figure out how am I going to fund this deal or how am I going to fund this loan. Now it's a new problem. I need to find another deal. I need to find another loan to keep this investor's money going because they're a great person and I want to make them money. And in doing so, I want to make a return to feed my family, right?
That's a great problem to have.
It is a great problem. However, it is still a problem. I mean, it
Right.
can, and you can run into this too with Madison Investing. It's a problem if you let it overwhelm you and overtake your decision making.
Sure.
Right? Your morals and your ethics have to be extremely strong when you're dealing with anybody's private money. It should
That's
be
right.
strong when you're dealing with anybody's money, whether it's institutional or private. But we all know about Ponzi schemes and things of that nature. But yeah, you can get caught up in it, and you can
Totally.
get caught up in the excitement or the profit, whatever drives you. So yeah, I'm kind of on my soapbox now. I'll get off. But so what are you focusing on right now? Today you're looking at growth, you're looking at just sustaining, you're looking into new markets. What's 2025 look like for you guys?
Yeah, and gosh, do I agree with everything you just said. 2025, man, it is a remarkable year in terms of looking at I still break it down into, we got before COVID and after COVID when it comes to the real estate landscape. And, of course, you have to go into interest rates, et cetera. But I look at right now, massive opportunity. And this is where I've already invested, quite a bit of my own money along with our investors in the past 12 months. Same thing will happen this year is banks have pulled back a lot from lending to investors. So as a former lender yourself, you'll probably appreciate this. Within bigger assets, apartment buildings, self-storage facilities, still love those. Those have been the focus of what we invest in. Great apartment communities and self-storage facilities in the South and Midwest, some of the Rockies. And the problem is the operators, that they might be great, the banks won't lend them the same amount that they used to be able to. And as a result, we're getting more on the lender side of the balance sheet. So we're focused on private credit and private debt. Now, the way that we have done that, it took a lot of R&D, man. Just, we're still looking at individual deals. So, we just closed on a great apartment building, 54 unit back in Kansas City about 3 months ago with some partners of ours. So we're still looking at one deal at a time, but much more interested in actually investing on the private credit side for the time being, because interest rates are not coming down anytime soon. Everyone thought when the Fed started cutting, mortgage rates were going to follow suit, and it's the opposite. So, a lot of these deals, people want to go and buy a new apartment community. People want to go buy a self-storage facility. They still need loans, gap closed loans, right? And so that's what we're leaning into right now. So we opened up like a feeder fund last year, and it's just thriving, because I think folks are realizing, I can get a great risk-adjusted return at a definitively lower risk profile. Still get cash flow, still get upside, all that good stuff, but you don't have to go and necessarily be common equity in the investment. I don't know how nerdy people wanted to get about it, but yeah, that's an area that I'm excited right now. It doesn't come with the tax benefits, but
right.
I do like those passive losses and paper losses that we can get when we find a great deal on the real estate side. But this is where I'm fired up right now. From
your own perspective, for your goals versus people that you talk to, are you looking for a flat certain percentage of, return on investment? Or are you looking at ROR and IRR? What does it look like?
Yeah, gosh, the ever evolving question, right? So the way I get myself centered, and I'm sharing this also because it's not only helpful for me on every deal I look at, and every year we set annual goals as just passive investors, but I'm told regularly by our members and our passive investors that invest alongside us that this is just super helpful, like fundamental principle stuff. I sit there and I say, okay, are we investing for cash flow? Are we investing for growth? That's question number one. Like, what's the goal for the money? And if it comes down to equity growth, then it has to be like, we're not worrying about cash flow in this example, but then I want it to be something that's going to be meaningful in terms of actual, growth multiple. It's got to be at least like 2.5 to 3x, and I'm using more just kind of broad strokes terms here. But that's kind of what I'm looking for is, 2.5 to 3x within about a 5-year period. On the cash flow side, private credit stuff that we're investing in right now is around 12% to 15%, annualized. And so that's interesting enough for me. As a guy who comes from tech, that would put most angel investors to sleep, right? They want a 25x multiple on their on their money, but that's also going to be 1 out of 100 companies they invest in. So
I was going to say they're gambling.
Yeah, it's just a different model. I like the best kind of boring. That is what I'm interested in at this stage, and I think that's more in line with what we're seeing right now on kind of that credit side.
Yeah, well, that for me, being a Midwest guy, and I've bought and sold in other states, but primarily I stay local in my region. That is, and we don't have the peaks and valleys in the Midwest.
Right.
It's much more flowing ups and downs. We don't get a lot of big surprises, and I can still walk out the door and buy cash flow. And it's not everywhere, but I can still do it. And I also get involved in a lot of creative deal structures, which hits all my hot buttons. But I can go and buy properties, put terms in place, whether that's seller financing or buying property subject to existing financing or a combination of multiple strategies. But I don't have to worry about 30% dips in value, and I'm not going to get 30% appreciation in value either in a
That's right.
year in most cases. But it's, as you said, it's boring. I got my ass kicked when the markets crashed in '07 and lost everything. And I don't ever really want that feeling again. So I meet plenty of people that hit home runs and they think they're God's gift to real estate investing. And I pat them on the back because that's what they want. Congratulations. You're amazing. You get that 1 out of 100 deal. I'll take the base hits all day long.
Yes, sir.
And at the end of the game, I'll probably be winning. So for sure.
Aligned on that.
Well, Spencer, man, we've been going for a while here. What is a question that I should have asked you that I didn't? And it can be about anything.
Ooh. I think maybe just like what are the biggest learnings about this whole financial freedom journey? So it's something along those lines. And I think when I connect with folks, two kind of general profiles of folks that I usually end up chatting with who are in the investing ranks, and I'm sure you know plenty of them as well. Yeah, they got folks that I know from my tech career. They're making incredible FANG company money, W-2 income, $300,000, $400,000 a year. And then you got the folks who are more entrepreneurial. They might be second, third generation owners of a company, old school business. In both those cases, they hit a point where they say, well, I have enough. So like really the question is like, what is enough? And it's getting a little philosophical here, Derek, but I think this is still one of the most fascinating, if not the most fascinating question for anyone who's investing and doing so actively, passively, both, what have you, is like, what is, challenging oneself to say like, what is enough? Because if you can circle that question and kind of get closer and closer to it every year with your annual goals, I find you start to realize you may not need as much as you think. And I'm talking on the financial side because your cup is filling up with these other wonderful aspects of life, and that means whether you're, as a father, as a person who has certainly spent a ton more focus on my health in the past years than I ever did. And when I was in the depths of my W-2 career. So I think that like, big learnings across the board. It's a wonderful privilege to be in a position to have the brain space to ask that question. I'm not delusional about that. I think that, it's a lofty thing, but people can't stop and think about that when they're worried about putting food on the table. But for those that actually get there and they're sitting there wondering like, well, what's the point of all this? Why am I still investing? I have plenty of zeros in the bank. It really comes down to, well, what is enough for you? So I guess I'll leave it there.
And that very much leads into, our mantra, live your vision, love your life. And you and I were talking a little bit before we started recording, just comparing notes on property values. And I explained, in the Midwest, I don't have to make Silicon Valley incomes to live a certain lifestyle. And it's all relative. And
right.
I would much rather have more time with my kids and my family and my friends and do stuff like this than to go make X number of dollars more. I'm not opposed to making that money as long as I'm a good steward of that money and I can live my vision. Great. And that's the part with having the vision that is so important. It is when you see these shiny objects coming at you, it's what you filter them with. Does this get me closer to my vision or take me further away? Man, there's so many business owners and entrepreneurs that just get caught up in the shiny objects, and I don't think they ever actually see the real big picture until it's too late in most cases. So,
gosh, do I agree with that? I completely agree with that, Derek.
Well, Spencer, it's truly been a pleasure having you on the show. I appreciate it so much. If anybody wants to get a hold of you at all, we can have a link at thegenerationsofwealth.com/Madison Investing, and that will redirect you and take you directly to Spencer's contact information if you want to talk to him about what he does and anything that he can help you with. Spencer, really hope that everything goes well for you. Who knows, someday you might be intrigued in the Midwest, and we can talk about other transactions. So
yeah, looking forward to it, Derek. No, thank you for having me on. This has been awesome.
Perfect. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for joining us at the Generations of Wealth podcast. Again, until next time, go out, live your vision, and love your life. See ya.
Thank you for joining us on another insightful episode of Generations of Wealth. May your newfound knowledge help you in leveling up your own strategies to get through the many obstacles to your money-making processes and bring you much closer to the financially secure life you truly deserve. Continue filling up your accounts and further polish your financial tactics by listening to more episodes of the podcast at thegenerationsofwealth.com. Because in your wealth building journey, there is no other way to go but up, giving you the chance to finally live your vision, love your life. That's all for now. See you on the next one.